And we're live. And this week we have the amazing Christine Gritmon. Hello,
That's
Christine.
Me. Hi, Tim. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Now, I know you from various conferences and other things, and you were actually featured in my last book.
I was. Oh, man, I should have brought my copy over here. Oh, well.
But this week we're talking about your favourite books, not the books you've been in. So,
I mean, my favorite besides that
Yes.
one. In addition to, it's a yes and situation.
Right. So are you ready? And we'll talk about the first book.
I'll pretend to be ready. Let's do it.
Tomorrow and Tomorrow
Ooh.
and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin.
Oh, God. This was a good one. All right. So, so first, a little background. I was a big reader when I was younger, but life happens and I found myself not really reading. So so I kind of started getting a little bit, I liked memoirs. I read a lot of memoirs. I started getting back into fiction during the pandemic because I was like, let's just like get out of real life. And in 2023, I decided, I said, you know what? I want to identify as a reader again. I want to be someone who reads. I'm going to read at least a book a month in 2023. And I doubled that. But the fact is, I was like, okay, I'm going to read books. And I'm not going to stick to my usual preferred genre of the memoirs of smart, funny women. Memoirs of smart, funny women. I love them. I'm like, no. I'm going to mix it up. And I'm going to ask people for recommendations. And several people recommended Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Some of them more generally just saying this is an amazing book that everyone should read. I think it came out maybe in late 2022 or something, so still pretty new at that point. Some people said, you know, just in general, people should read it. Some people specifically said I needed to read it because, you know, I guess I've always been friends with / dated / married people who are kind of like in that geeky world, especially like a gamer sort of world. So they figured, okay, well, that plays into the book. So they figured that might be a point of interest. There's just so much more to it. Oh my God. So it is fiction. Mm-hmm. And it follows two main people. And we don't start the book when they're little, but they meet when they're little. They meet when they're like, I don't know, 11 or something. And it follows them, I think, through their early 40s, something like that. Most of the action takes place in their 20s, but it just follows these two people for a long time. And there are video game components. They actually develop a video game together. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that. It's a huge chunk of the novel. And it's really fascinating because as soon as I read this, I needed my husband to read it too. Not only so that I could discuss it with him, but also because I knew he would get very different things out of it. Because first of all, I'm not really a gamer. He is more of a gamer, but also he's worked in tech and all these things. And there's a lot of that going on. But then there's other elements that really did it for me. A lot of it is really about human relationships and how they ebb and flow and change, you know, in all sorts of nuanced ways, especially over a long period of time. This is not a romance, this book. It is very much, though, about the ever-shifting relationship of these two people and people around them. And there's also a lot of other cultural allusions made that, you know, I got a lot out of and maybe he didn't get as much out of, but someone else who is maybe more culturally literate than I am would have got even more. There's just so much going on in this book and it comes together so beautifully. Nothing is, you know, heavy-handed. And it's just really great. And I would say especially for someone who is within a 5-year span on either end of my age, maybe 10 years, would especially get it. At the first game they play together, I think, is Oregon Trail. So that should kind of say the approximate age group that will get the most out of it, which I am chock in the middle of. I've seen people call my generation the Oregon Trail generation, right in between X and millennials. But I mean, I think there's a bit more appeal than that niche. I think the author herself is a bit younger than I am, but it was just, there's so much to it. And it's one of those books where you miss them when you're done in a sense, but also you're kind of mad at them, you know? My husband was mad at them. Like, there's all sorts of elements, the nuances of their relationship and stuff. My husband's an innocent. He was just very like, why can't they just be cool? Like, why did she have to say that to him? Or why did he have to say that to her? Like, why can't they just like be cool? Like, because they're humans, man.
Yeah. Well, last week we had a romance over on, and yeah, this is one of the things that's mentioned. It was like some of the books were not necessarily that wonderful.
Oh, but this one, oh, I just loved this book. I think it was so good. It's perfect as it is. There couldn't be a sequel or anything. It's very much freestanding. It's amazing. I am already a little bit disappointed in the future movie that must be made of it someday. But at the time, I'm gonna see it 10 times.
Yeah. Well, we have a strange message from somebody, but I think they put it in. They said, "Hi, I have a surprise to a friend of mine. Say happy birthday, Rana." I think they're doing that just to see if I'm actually live. And
all right, whoever Rana is, happy birthday, Rana.
So yes, I think it's Rana. Apologies to Rana for she's not pronounced Rana. This is from Jafar Shard Fardo. I think he's commented on previous shows.
I don't know. Well, I hope this friend is real. I hope they have a lovely birthday. I hope they go read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We've done our part of the deal, so we've got to read the book now. Right.
It's on a lot of people's best lists. It won a lot of awards, and I saw several people around the turn of this new year basically saying, hey, I'm looking for book suggestions for 2024, and a lot of people mentioned this one.
Yeah, I've obviously got a lot of book suggestions I can give to people, but should we go on to the next one?
Sure.
Sorry, I cut you off there. The Nightingale.
This is another, I never would have picked this book up. But again, I was asking for recommendations. I think the first person who recommended it was my husband's aunt. That's who I wrote down. I have a little note stock on my phone with book recommendations and who gave them to me. So she was, I think, the first. And she recommended Kristin Hannah in general, but especially The Nightingale. And then several other people independently recommended The Nightingale. And it's not something that I would have picked up, but it really stuck with me. What it is it's essentially a view of the French experience of World War II is kind of one way to put it. It's historical fiction. It is specifically about one family's experience. So as an American, we have a bit less of national consciousness of World War II to a degree. I mean, obviously, if you're Jewish, for example, that doesn't hold. But in general, when I see stuff, I feel like Europe has a lot more kind of lingering World War II trauma. Again, unless you're Jewish. The average European has more lingering World War II trauma than the average American because it wasn't fought on our shores. We don't all know someone who was impacted. So it is very interesting to see. I've seen some things about the British perspective of World War II and about the Jewish perspectives of World War II, but this was rural French perspective of World War II, which is something I had never even given thought to. Quite honestly, like obviously I think of the United States first, and I think of what was happening in Germany, and I don't even really think about the British experience as much either. I now live in the UK, so I'm trying to learn a bit more, but I never really thought about the French. And so it's really interesting. It follows this family basically from before the onset of World War II and then during World War II, and you know, there is, of course, a story in there. It's a story of someone who does all sorts of brave things and all of this, but really just there were some times where I had to put it down just because there was just so much bad stuff happening. There were points where I started actually crying, and on it, that's often not what I want from a book or a movie. It is very good to be moved. I'm moved by everyday life, and so I kind of like my escapes to be an escape, and this wasn't such an escape, but it was very educational. Even though it was fiction, it really gave me a different perspective on things, for sure, seeing another perspective that I hadn't really considered. And it is a very moving story, very powerfully told. and it's pretty incredible. And it really just stuck with me because, again, it gave me a perspective that I wouldn't have otherwise had. It gave me, albeit a fictionalized education, but still based very much in reality. And this is another one where when I mentioned that I was reading it, I got a million messages of people being like, "Oh my God, I loved that book." And I've again seen it on people's lists. It was very popular, and it is being turned into a movie, actually. But yeah, it's just powerful, and it's something that I would not have thought of. So I'm really glad that I took so many recommendations this past year.
You know, you don't have to pick films that turned into a book.
I know I don't. I know. Again, I'm American. I think about, the movie version of things.
About the rights. Okay, let's go on to the next one. A Place Called Home by David Ambroz.
Another depressing one. But this one I had to read because I know the author. I don't know him well. We were in the same, not only same university, but same class after college, class of 2002. I remember him existing. Like, I knew he existed. I don't have a lot of memories of him because we didn't hang out. I vaguely recall him being involved in politics, I think. But that's about it. And then, somehow I found out about this book, and it's his life story, and it is heavy, man. So he had a mentally ill mother. He and his siblings spent a lot of their childhood either homeless or very tentatively housed in very impoverished situations that they would often get kicked out of because of his mother's mental illness. He was out of school more often than he was in it. There were just so many things. And so, first of all, again, talk about giving a perspective that you wouldn't have otherwise had. Just the way you live day to day as a homeless child is just, it's just fascinating. Just the lifestyle that he had to have and what his baseline of normal was is just something that you wouldn't have thought of ever. But this is something that's impacting tons of people every day.
Yeah.
In these wealthy first world countries, it is impacting, tons and tons of children. So he eventually, and it isn't a spoiler to say any of this because I feel like he's talked about it a lot, but he eventually does get himself taken from his mother's care after the system failing him so many times, the failures of the protective services system and all of that, and the schools, and it's a tricky space because those organizations, they don't want to be in the business of taking children from their families. Yeah. And you get that. But sometimes that's necessary. Yeah. And so it's just very tricky. And so anyway, so after various failures of the system, he winds up being taken from his mother's care and he enters foster care, which is also a very damaged system.
Yeah.
And he experiences abuse there of various sorts, but then he is eventually able to get himself into this academic program that allows him to kind of catch up. It allowed him to get a scholarship to a very good college where he really didn't want anyone to know his story. And I don't think people did. But one thing that I really just respect the hell out of, besides the amount of hard work that he was able to do to get where he's gotten, is also just the fact that from the time he was still a minor and still in foster care, he said, I'm going to do what I can to make this system better for others. I'm going to do what I can to prevent other kids from falling through the cracks. And so he was going to Washington, D.C. as a teenager to really advocate for improved systems for children and improved systems for families and for the mentally ill, and especially, the foster care system and making that a better system as well. And he's still doing that. And the amazing thing is now he is incredibly successful by any measure of the word. He's worked for huge companies like Disney and Amazon, and he's worked specifically in things like corporate giving for those companies. His whole life has been dedicated to making things better for others. And it's just incredible what he's been able to do with his life. And he is a foster father, and he just had his first child of his own. And he is still just really making sure to get out there every single day and make sure that other kids and adults, for that matter, have a better time than he did. And, you know, you hear about triumph of the human spirit and all of that, but seriously, my goodness. And his siblings also have done well for themselves. I mean, the fact that all three of them are thriving, that's something inside. So I was just incredibly, it just, again, it really stuck with me. It changed the way I view so many things. And it makes me want to, I still don't know what exactly I can do, but it makes me want to do something.
Yeah.
And I've told several people to read this book, but especially people who I've heard. I've met a few people this year actually who have mentioned that they're getting into foster care. So I always tell them to read this book as well. Just because a lot of the situations those kids are coming from are not so good. And, you know, their situation of origin maybe was not so good, hence being in foster care, but you don't realize maybe some of the foster care situations also have been, you know, horrifying. So, yeah.
Well,
it's weird. I usually like a bit more escapism in my media, but I'm really glad I read this book. Yeah, David has to autograph it for me at our next reunion, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think often the people who've caught up, who've struggled to catch up academically and other things, they just keep on going. So that's why they end up ahead. Because they run past and then they're ahead before you know. So I think that's one of the reasons why often people catch up. Okay, so let's go on to the next book, which is another cheerful one. And if you know, I'm British, so it's...
Oh, man. All right. Well, this one I don't have to spend that long on because people know this one.
Yeah.
So Anne Frank, Diary of a Young Girl. Yeah. I was like an Anne Frank obsessive for a little while. I worked on the play in high school. It was the first thing I did in high school. And that was a formative experience. But through reading the play, I read the actual book. And then I got actually the definitive edition of the book that I have on my shelf now, because Anne Frank, for those of you who don't know somehow, real girl who was a Jewish girl in the Netherlands, and she and her family hid from the Nazis in an attic for years. Yeah. And there were a few incredible people who risked their lives every single day to not only continue hiding them, but to make sure they got food. They weren't, lying in their own waste. They really helped keep them alive in hiding for all these years. And so this is Anne's actual diary. So it's the diary of a teenage girl. I think she was 12 when they started and then 14 by the end. I'm not sure. But it's her actual diary. But so spoiler alert, sorry, but she dies, her sister dies, her mother dies, her father survived. This isn't even in the book, but her father did survive. And after the war, he actually went back to the attic and he found her diary. Wow. And what was initially published and what is the most widely published has been edited quite a bit, because there were bits when, Anne was talking about thoughts about boys and her burgeoning sexuality. I mean, she was an adolescent. There are bits where she spoke negatively of her mother, again, adolescent. And so he had taken those out. So I have the definitive version that has them back in. And I also have a book that this year with books, I'm actually rereading some stuff and I'm doing pairs of books. I'm reading kind of companion pieces. And so I'm going to reread Diary of Anne Frank. And I have a book by one of the people who was helping her. So I'm going to read that as well. And I saw someone speak, actually, at the Holocaust Museum. I saw someone speak who had been one of her helpers, which was pretty incredible. This was obviously a while ago. I don't think anyone's still alive now who was involved. But and hopefully this year I'll make it to Amsterdam and actually get to the Anne Frank Museum, see where she was, cry my eyes out. I remember when I went to the Anne Frank exhibit. There was a special exhibit in 2003 at the Holocaust Museum in DC. And it was a very strange feeling because on the one hand, I was totally geeking out because I'd read a lot about her and I was very entrenched in all this. But on the other hand, it's not exactly fandom because it's horrific. But absolutely my favorite thing about Anne Frank, about the book, about how real it is, and about her and what an incredible person she was and should have gotten a longer opportunity to be, is the quote she said towards the end. So after being in hiding for years already, she said, "I still believe that people truly are good at heart."
Yeah.
The fact that she still believed in the capacity of humanity to be good when she was experiencing its worst, I think is just astounding. And the fact that it wasn't composed by some author to do something trite with it and put a nice little bow on things.
Yeah.
It's an actual person. And I just wonder what she would have done, but she's already done so much.
Yeah. It's funny enough, it's like, I don't know if it's one of those, the red car thing, but I already had a conversation on Threads with somebody about the Holocaust Museum today.
Well, Holocaust Remembrance Day was on Saturday. So I think that's a big part of it. It's very, and then of course, not going to get into it, but there are current situations that are also bringing it to mind.
Well, it was also, well, I suspect this is why it was Holocaust on Saturday, is that that's also the anniversary when Auschwitz was liberated.
Yes, it is. That's why.
In World War II. I don't know why I started thinking, but my trip to the Holocaust Museum, I most remember this video about the genocide in Rwanda. So anyway, this is probably skirting the topics that they don't like.
I didn't mean for this to be so depressing. It's really, especially if you know me, I'm like a happy person. And honestly, I think this is stuff that stuck with me is the point.
I think the next books are a bit more cheerful.
Oh, I hope so.
Let's go on to
Let's find out, shall we?
Furiously Happy.
This is a nice tie-in. Okay, so this actually is also depressing and joyful and hilarious and miraculous and the best. So Jenny Lawson is known to millions throughout the world as the Bloggess.
Yeah.
And so in the Bloggess, she is, of course, a blogger. That's how she kind of came to prominence. And her first book, which was not this one, her first book is a memoir. Again, I love memoirs of smart, funny women. A memoir called Let's Pretend This Never Happened. And it's hilarious. But the thing about Jenny is she has some trauma in her past. She had more weirdness than trauma, but some weirdness is traumatic, you know. But then she also has... She suffers from mental illness, and I don't mean like, you know, me who's like, oh, I have anxiety and I have tendencies towards depression. I mean, she's like done electric shock therapy. Like she's dealt with some serious hurdles, and she has some physical ailments as well. She has an autoimmune condition. She's all these things going on, and she manages to make it all amazing and hilarious. Like her first book, I remember my infant son was having surgery. So I was, of course, freaking out. He was 2 months old and they'd just taken him away, you know, anesthesia and blah, blah, blah. And I was freaking out. And I was reading this book and I got to the chapter about her miscarriage of all things. But because she's Jenny Lawson, she told this story in the most hilarious way. I was literally laughing out loud at a story about her miscarriage while my infant son was like being operated on. But it was hilarious. Is that she just finds a way to just reach in and be like, "What is this?" You know, it's just amazing. So Furiously Happy sums me up as a human being, because her point of Furiously Happy is she says, you know, I won't always be able to experience the good. Sometimes I'm depressed. Sometimes I'm like disassociating. Sometimes I can't move my arms. She's like, there's shit happening and I can't always do these things. So when I can, I'm damn well gonna.
Yeah.
Her whole point is, I'm going to have the experiences I can have. I'm going to wring every last bit of joy and ridiculousness and amazingness out of every moment that I can, partially as a form of rebellion because of the times that I can't.
Yeah.
And this already resonated with me. This came out, I think, maybe 10 years ago or something. I saw her book tour for it. I got it signed. I got to give her a big old hug. So so this is like 10 years, but the fact is I just go back to it sometimes. Sometimes when I'm having a rough time, I'll reread it because it's such a reminder. I see so much of myself in it because I'm so determined to enjoy everything I can, just as a big extra FU to the things I can't. And one thing that actually, one story that it reminds me of from my own life is, and this is minor, but in fall of 2018, my family and I went to Disney World. And I don't have, health issues to the degree that the bloggist has, but I have some chronic pain issues. And I do have some chronic exhaustion, fatigue stuff going on. And it tends to crop up at really frustrating times. And so going to Disney World is a freaking marathon. It is exhausting no matter who you are, no matter what situation you're in. I reached a point before the end of our trip where I could not keep pushing through. I was not okay. And I couldn't pretend that I was. And I was like, I have a choice here. I can stay home for not home, but in where we were staying for like the last 2 days of our trip, miss out on those memories with my family, have them feeling weird, experiencing without me and wanting to get back to me and preoccupied with how I was doing. Or I could, so I finally got over my concern over this and I rented a wheelchair. Lots of people do that at Disney World. You don't have to be actually handicapped, but I felt weird doing it. But I could not make it through those last couple days without it. I couldn't push through. And in fact, even with the chair, I still had to take naps. I actually found myself Googling where in the park you could rest. We found there's an aquarium thing, an Ariel themed aquarium, and upstairs I just had Greg wheel me into a corner and I just slept while the kids looked at fish. And that said to me, okay, I wasn't even 40 yet. I said, if that's where I'm at now, I need to make sure, not that I say, okay, no more travel for me. I'm like, no, man, I got to do all the travel I can because who knows when I won't be able to anymore. And I have learned a lot of ways to take care of myself physically and energetically when I travel. Energy management when I travel is top priority. Some people who saw me this September when I had just moved to the UK got to see completely depleted me. Even in June, actually, at Atomicon, I was depleted too, just because of how my year had been. And I'm like, you know what? I need to do the things I can while I can do them, because when I can't do them, it sucks so much. But at least I can say, I did that cool stuff and I'm going to do that cool stuff again.
Yeah.
So Furiously Happy is really just a way of saying, hey, stuff happens, but I'm going to make good stuff happen, because you can't control how much bad there is, but you can control how much good there is. And you can knock that ratio towards the positive by saying, you know what, for all these bad things that happen, I'm going to make 2 good things happen for each of you bad things. So I just kind of love that.
Yeah, I think it's true.
Lawson, I love her. She has other books too. She's amazing.
I think you need to take a break, or a break takes you. That's my expression, because you can get overwhelmed. Anyway, should we go on to the next one?
We're getting to business books next. Okay. So, several people watching this will probably know me from, professional shenanigans. I'm into personal branding and social media and the intersection of the two. And so one phrase that marketers love to use is about know, like, and trust. It's about the know, like, and trust factor. And the actual quote that is drawn from is from Bob Burg. And it is, and it's about business. It's from his book, Endless Referrals. And his phrase is, he calls this the golden rule of networking, which is All things being equal, people will choose to do business with and refer business to those who they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
And so, know, like, and trust, I have been saying for years that I'm going to get those 3 words tattooed at some point somewhere. I told this to Bob Burg. He said, please don't. But I might. And, I'll tag him. And the best thing is I'll tag him in the social post about it, and he will respond because he's Bob Burg and he's the go-giver. So the go-giver is also the name of his, I guess it's his community, his newsletter, all of that. The go-giver is his big thing. And I've had the book for a while, but I'm really going through it now and studying it right now as I figure out sort of the next step of my career. But his thing is you get by giving. And it's funny because I've been to BNI groups. Do you have BNI in the UK? I think you do.
We do. It's generally people getting up at 2 a.m.
It's very different. So I think BNI is very different from what Bob preaches. But the fact is, BNI's slogan is "Givers Get."
Yeah.
Which is ironic because that's not how I feel BNI really works exactly. But with the go-giver, the gist is, basically that you get by giving, and you get by not thinking about getting is also what comes a step further. It's not like you give everything away for free and you don't charge anything for anything and you don't care about business or such silly things like money. It's not that. But, the money is a lovely effect of the thing you actually care about. So you could be doing this action and getting this money, and it's a matter of where your focus is. It could be, the same action, but if you're focused on the money, it's not going to work as well as if you're focused on the action. And then there's the money. That's a really simplistic way of putting it. But it really is kind of, it's something I really need to be reading right now. Because I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm doing all this stuff. And I have people who think I'm great, but then I'm not getting any money. And where are my opportunities? And I'm getting a little whiny and losing focus on the point, which is helping people. And people say all the time, you need to have a service mindset. And that's what's really going to help. And especially with what I do. What I do, I came to from a service mindset. I came to it by saying, there's people out there doing amazing stuff and nobody knows.
Yeah.
And I want to help them figure out how they can make sure people do find them. The people who need them need to find them and need to find their gifts. And I want to help them figure out how to empower themselves to be found. And it's clear to me and it's not clear to them. And I want to help them. And I need to get back to that focus. I need to stop thinking about, but I'm not getting this or that. No, I need to get back to the point. And so Bob Burg's words are helping me out with that. Bob himself is an extremely gracious man. He walks the talk. He does not consider himself above talking to anybody. And it's amazing. And he does not consider his ideas so precious that you need to pay squillions of dollars for them. And yet he's doing okay. Yeah. I just really like his whole vibe. I really love the idea of that service mindset and that it can actually be the key to what we think of as success. It can lead to that because of a whole bunch of factors in humanity that just kind of make it go that way. And karma too. He wouldn't describe it as karma, but karma.
Talking about karma, we have a comment from Mr. Biz Paul.
Biz Paul, he's my favorite. Hi.
So, hair looking on point, Gritmon. So I think that's about the fact you've had your hair.
These books. He's seen the books in real life.
Yeah. Right. Shall we go on to the next book?
Let's. Which one is it? Another businessy one, I think.
They're all businessy ones there.
All right, let's see.
The Referable Speaker by Michael Andrew Davis.
Yes. All right. Another talk about me failing. So I'm a very positive person. Just so I love speaking on stages, giving workshops, talking to groups. And I remember this specific event that I spoke at in 2022, in spring 2022. I said I did well. I mean, it was fine. It was good. But I actively said to some good friends of mine afterwards who have seen my career for years, I said, I've gotten as far as I can with this on coasting. And what I mean by that is the way I was approaching speaking was, I know my stuff. I'm not afraid of public speaking. I have presence. So I'm going to get up there and share what I know.
Yeah.
But people who are serious speakers, they work harder than that. They are more prepared than that. They give it a lot more thought than that. They practice, like they know what they're going to say, instead of just kind of sketching it out roughly and being like, well, I know what I'm talking about. So I'll just talk about it. So I said, Andrew and Pete were there. And I said to Andrew and Pete specifically, I'm ready to up my game. And I had seen them go through their own process with this just a few years earlier, because I saw them speak back when they were speaking mostly to get business for their agency, which is a very different place from where they are now. Yeah. And I saw them really rise up the ranks and do keynotes at huge things. And, now they're like probably bajillionaires. I've seen them grow really rapidly. And they said to me, okay, here's the book you need. And it's written by Drew Davis, who I've seen speak and who's a great speaker. I've seen him speak at their events and others. And Michael Port, I'm less personally familiar with, but he runs a whole academy now on how to become a great speaker that people pay thousands to do. And sure enough, I opened the book and Andrew and Pete are mentioned in the first chapter because he coached them. They worked directly with Drew Davis. And Anne Handley is in there as well. Anne Handley is one of my speaker idols. I've seen her give the same presentation numerous times. And so I know for a fact it's scripted. I know how much work she put into it. She makes it feel so breezy. Not breezy as in not thought through, but breezy as in like we're having a conversation. And I just love that vibe on stage. She doesn't feel scripted because she's not stiff. She keeps it loose. She keeps it human. She keeps it engaging. There's an energy transfer there. And I think I was kind of afraid that if I got too planning, I'd lose that. And I was lazy. But anyway, so I started studying this in 2022 and I was going to hit it hard. And then my 2023 was hard.
Yeah.
That's all I can really say. And everyone who follows me kind of gets it. So my 2023 was hard. And I didn't do the work. My 2023 presentations that I gave were fine. They weren't that next level. And so now I actually am ready to be at that next level, especially since I've gotten a few higher paid speaking gigs, behind me where I did put in a little more work. But I kind of know now, if I want to be that kind of speaker, and if that's what I want to make from speaking, and if I want people to work with me after hearing me speak, which I haven't gotten enough of, I need to put in that work and I need to create that talk. I need to create those signature talks that actually make those things happen and that I put enough work in to command those results for. And so I'm hitting the books again. But I will say that the best thing about that book is that the people who have done it, I've seen the results.
Yeah.
So me saying, oh, do you have to think about it that much? Do you have to put that many hours into it? I mean, come on. Yes, actually, if you want to be at that level, yes. If you want to stay at the level that I was at when I started, okay, fine. Just knowing more than the audience and being able to communicate effectively is enough. But if you want to actually make this a real part of your business, it's worth putting the work in to make it a real product that you are commanding that sort of price point for and that type of work for. And again, to get to the Bob Burgness of it all, to actually deliver the value that I'm capable of delivering.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the Referable speaker. Again, I've read through a lot of it. I'm going to start it from the very beginning. And I had notes going, like not in the book, but in a notebook, like every page. I'm taking notes in the book in the Go Giver, but I'm using a notebook for the Referable speaker because there's just too much to write. But it's the gist of it is Don't tie yourself in knots trying to be all things to all people. Come up with your message, figure out the best possible way you can convey it, really hone that down so that instead of you saying, yeah, I'll do that, yeah, I'll do that, yeah, I'll do that, and making it all kind of half-assed because you're reinventing the wheel every time, you're honing this gorgeous talk that's amazing and gets you to be a referable speaker because someone will see that talk and say, I want you to do that talk for my organization.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. And by the end of 2024, that's going to be how it's working for me.
Yeah. I've listened to the audio book of Michael Port's Steal the Show, and that was very good. And I think this is.
I gotta check that out next. When I'm serious speaker.
Yeah, I think this is after it was written after that. I don't know. I'd have to check. But so presumably it's even better, and it's got Drew Davis in it as well. So.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe you can guess the last book, but
I can.
Let's play the transition. And it's Content Mavericks by Andrew and Pete. Actually, before we say that, there's another comment from BizPaul.
Oh.
Which, in hindsight, nobody's going to understand, but he says, big up the Hanley. So,
yes.
And he also just said Drew Davis is such a great guy. So
those are both true facts. And we got to hang out with both of them at Marketing Profs B2B Forum last October in Boston, which we both spoke.
Anyway, let's back to Andrew and Pete's wonderful book.
So it's really funny because Andrew and Pete themselves they're always surprised when I say how much this book means to me. Yeah. Because part of why they did write a quality book, they didn't half-ass it, but the fact is to them, part of why they wrote it is because they were trying to build their speaking career at that time. And you get more speaking gigs if you have a book because people consider you more serious. I don't know. So you need a book in order to get those high level stages. So that's part of why they wrote this book. It's really okay. So this book blows my mind and I go back to it. I have lent it to people. Thank God I got it back. And I have reread it periodically because I think it's an important set of things to go back to periodically in your business. So basically, it's kind of a Trojan horse. It's called Content Mavericks. And their whole gist is it's about how to put your own stamp on your content, and stamp stands for something. I forget what it stands for, but you put your stamp on your content so that people know it's yours. So it seems like, okay, it's about content. It's not. It's a branding book. It's a branding book. It really takes you through. So the first time I read it, I was on my way to Social Media Marketing World, which is where I met them. It's probably where I met you. Like I've met so many people at Social Media Marketing World over the years. So I was on my way from New York to San Diego. It's a very short book. So first, I read it all the way through, straight up. I immediately started it again from the beginning with a notebook. So on my flight from New York to San Diego, I read it through 2 times in a row. The second time doing every single exercise, really giving thought to every little bit of it. And that's the bit that I have returned to and I'm actually about to return to again because it just asks you the right questions and encourages you to look at your business and your brand and your content. Yes. In a certain way. And it really forces you, what it does for me is I tend to fall into the trap of I create what I like to create, or I create what's easy to create or something like that. And they're like, no. Creation is energy. What are you putting your energy towards? Why are you putting it towards that? Where does your business come from? If it's not that, that shouldn't be where your energy goes. And it just really just helps me refocus. And boy, do I need that right now. So I'm going to be attacking that again. But I feel like, again, businesses evolve, brands evolve, personal brands more than any other really need to evolve. And so I think it's an incredible set of checks to go through, not only to refocus and get yourself back on track, but maybe realizing you need to move your track this way. A little bit. So it's kind of like I never go into the book the same way twice. It's not going over the same exercises. It's going through the exercises in a new way every time. And I just think it's tremendously valuable. So even if for them, it was kind of, a big business card to get them speaking gigs. It has honestly helped me, and it continues to help me. And I have lent it out to several people. I've recommended it to several people, and I think it's just great. Thanks, Andrew and Pete.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, good content, even in book form, even if they don't intend it to be for that reason, is still good content.
It's such good content. They just know their stuff. And you can't argue with their results. They're doing very well. So and it's funny because I know that over the years they've like struggled to watch me struggle. They've been like, why don't you just do this? And so this is helpful to have that bit of them on my bookshelf.
I'm just going to play the book transition. Why I do that, if anybody's interested, is because I can. The video editing package I use, you can just go scene transition and it finds where scenes are. And having that means I can just chop it up more easily.
Work smarter, not harder, Tim.
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically most of what I do. So, who is Christine Gritmon? And can you give us a little bit of insight about what you do and have you got a book in you?
Oh, God. So for years now, I've been promising a book so I can get more speaking gigs. No, honestly, it's because for years, I have hosted shows. For a few years, from about 2017 to 2020, I had a weekly live stream called Social. That was, an opportunity to bring on the smart people who I had met and who I had access to and to interview them. And so first of all, I'm developing a little bit more of a relationship with that smart person I'm fortunate to have access to. Second of all, I'm getting more of their incredible knowledge. Third of all, I'm the source for sharing that incredible knowledge with my audience. So that's what Social was for a bit. And then in 2020, I stopped Social and I started Let's Talk About Brand. It's not a live stream, and it is primarily a podcast. It does have videos on YouTube, and it's specifically about personal branding because I said I need to focus on the thing I'm most into. So it's about personal branding. It's coming back in a couple weeks, maybe 2 weeks from its winter hiatus. And so part of the book in me is I have all these interviews, and I'm not going to transcribe the interviews and turn it into a book. The interviews are going to be kind of the research from which I cobbled together, my own thoughts on subsections of personal branding, on subtopics. So I'll be like, here's, what I think about this, and punctuate it with bits from those interviews and be like, well, here's what this person said. Here's what I actually think. And things like that. So I'll need to get their permission and all of that first. And so this goes back years. But I've had some really incredible people on the show. And again, I can share their insights, but the book I really do need to build upon my own. So I'm going to do that and just kind of punctuate it with all these other smart people and let them also serve as inspiration for some of these topics and some of these thoughts, because those have been some amazing conversations.
Yeah. Well, Biz Paul says, yes, she has a book in her, for sure. So I'm putting emphasis on it. I forgot the question. I ask all guests this question. If you had to pick one of those books to give to somebody, which one would it be? And if you can't answer just like of a general answer, say what your decision tree would be to pick which one of those books to give to somebody. That makes sense. There are two.
Because again, I did kind of do half books I read for pleasure, even though I wound up with a really depressing chunk. Half of them were for pleasure, and half of them were for business. So I will actually choose two for that reason. For pleasure, I keep telling everyone to read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. It's not one of those like paradigm shifting, game changing books that impacted who I am inside, but it's just a really freaking good book. It's just so good, and it's not like anything else, and I loved it. And then for business, Content Mavericks. It's just such an easy read, but you can make it so much more substantial by, you know, having a notebook by your side and really going through and writing your own notes for everything. So that's it. If you want to read for pleasure, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. If you want to up your game with your brand and refocus your content, Content Mavericks by Andrew and Pete.
I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for short non-fiction books.
Yeah.
In as much as what it's a personal bugbear of mine, and there have been a few books, and I won't mention them here because I'm going to get sued, but there have been a few books where it's basically one chapter and then they just keep repeating that chapter over again.
They had a good idea. They had a viral LinkedIn post and they just decided to fatten it up. Yeah.
To make it a book because they thought they had to have 30 or 50,000 words for a book. And it's kind of like, no, you just would have been better to have it.
And it's tempting. It's so easy to self-publish now.
Yeah.
And everyone's saying that everyone needs a book, which I disagree with.
Yeah.
And so it is very tempting to go that route. It's incredibly tempting to just take some of what I've created over the past, 8 years and just kind of package it into a book. But I'm not going to, which is why I don't have my book yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but it's a yet. It's a yet.
Well, I mean, one thing that I think a lot of people don't appreciate is that if you record audio, you can get a lot of words quite quickly. So that's one way if you feel like, because you're quite experienced with interviewing and doing solo shows. So
well, not only that, it's interesting. So I actually had a gig for a little while as a ghostwriter for a very, very well-known entity in the social media world. And that job largely consisted of taking the transcript. I didn't do the transcription. They hired someone to do a transcription. And I'd get the transcript and the recording. And the way you structure an interview and the way you speak in an interview is not the way you would write a piece. So my job was to turn it into a well-written piece. And it wasn't supposed to read like a transcript either. I'm not talking about an edited transcript. Like I'd have to do surgery because they'd talk about something here and then they'd talk about it again a little later.
Yeah.
But I'd have to put those pieces together and make things kind of happen in a more orderly fashion than they had in the course of human conversation. And then years later, I was the content editor for Social Media Pulse, and I did a lot of editing on some people's stuff, and I did almost nothing on other people's stuff because it just has to have a certain flow to it in order to read well. And so I will be doing a lot of surgery on those recorded pieces, but again, just having that resource there is going to be huge, and being able to cobble together essentially an outline out of those interviews and then fill it in with my thoughts, like having prompts. Basically, they're going to be prompts for me. And I'm going to look at that. I'm going to be like, how does reading that conversation now make me feel? Like, what do I think? What are my thoughts on that topic outside of that conversation? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we've gone totally off topic here. So
have we? It's books.
Yeah. Well, it's books.
It's books.
So I will say thank you so much for being the guest today.